Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and welcome to video 1 in my new coffee card series. This should be no surprise to anyone who's followed me for longer than a month, really. I kind of have an obsession and decided why not do an entire series based on cards based around coffee. So yeah, this will be pretty much an ongoing thing. I'm not going to do these back to back forever type thing. I'm just going to do 1 or 2 a week. We'll see. Yeah, it's not a time constraint thing like regular holidays, which makes it even more fun. So for this card, I'm using the Simon Says stamp What's Brewing stamp set. And I inked it up with Simon Says Intense Black ink. And I had stamped it onto pattern paper from the Pebbles Happy Day pack. And stamped that. And then I coated it with my anti-static powder tool, because I didn't want the embossing powder to stick to the actual outline of the cup. And then I stamped this fun little scripty hello that's from the same set with Versamark ink. And then I coated it with Simon Says Detail Gold embossing powder. I gotta say, I am loving the Simon Says embossing powders. They're so nice. And for a super fine detail, it embosses really pretty. I just love it. So once it was embossed, I wanted to add a little bit more detail to the mug. And sorry, I just had to roll off to find. I used Distress ink, and it's Peacock Feathers that I used. It was a color that I thought would go well with this pattern paper. And I just used my mini ink blending tool and sponged the ink onto kind of the bottom of the cup to kind of give sort of an ombre effect. And then I also sponged just along the top there to look like the inside was a little bit darker as well, just for that little extra. And I'd also stamped just the top of the mug onto this, just a scrap of white cardstock with that same ink. And then I just grabbed one of my clean color markers. Really, you could use anything. I even thought about using more Distress ink, something that's brown anyway. But yeah, my clean color markers are sitting right here. So I used mid brown and just colored in that little center area and then trimmed it out and set it aside. And then I'm trimming out the cup. And I will say I did a really awful job trimming this out. It's been a long time since I paper pieced, and 2, I was kind of distracted, had my kids running around when I made this. So I didn't do the best job trimming it. Usually my cutting is a lot nicer. And then I cut out the center there by just poking the scissors in, and this was pretty easy because it's not, super detailed or anything. And one way though to kind of fix the unevenness and crookedness of my trimming, I took this is a Memento Tuxedo black marker, and I just used the brush tip and ran it all along the edges here so it covers up the white edge of the paper to make it look a little bit better. And then I used just my multi-medium matte adhesive to adhere that little piece that I'd colored with the brown marker, so it looks like this mug has some wonderful coffee. But as I was doing this, I was like, I should have done it a lighter brown because I always add a ton of cream and sugar to my coffee, but whatever. Adhered that into place. And then I grabbed one of the wonky stitched rectangle dies from My Favorite Things, and I'm going to die cut this fun kind of emoticon style pattern paper from the same pack. And then this hello paper is actually what kind of inspired this card. So I grabbed that and I used the largest die from My Favorite Things Blueprints 1 Dynamics. And it just gives it a clean edge. You can totally trim with your paper trimmer if you want, but I just like the clean edge that die cutting gives to pattern paper and cardstock. So once I did that, I inked up the mug stamp again with the same black ink and stamped on this pattern paper. This is kind of an extra step, but this also helps kind of fix the mess I made trimming out the mug itself. If I adhered it flat anyway, and that's what I was originally going to do, was just adhere it flat, and then the black line of the stamped mug would kind of help fix the little bit of mess I made with the trimmed pattern paper mug, if that makes sense. But as I was doing this, I thought of something else. So stamp that, and then the steam stamp, I'm using Simon Says this is their slate gray ink. So stamp that onto the pattern paper as well. And I just love how that looks on the gray pattern paper. And then I decided I was going to adhere the mug with foam tape. And I didn't want, it would have looked a little weird if I adhered it with foam tape over top of the stamp mug. So I created a shadow basically on this stamped image so that when you do view it at an angle, it looks like it was meant to be. So I took another gray clean color marker. This one is just gray. And just colored just around the edges where you're actually, like what little bit you're going to see. The center is irrelevant. And then I took another gray marker. This time I think I used green gray here. and created a little bit of shadowing along the bottom just to ground this image. And then I used a little bit of light gray to kind of blend it, not so much. And then, yeah, use some foam tape to adhere this mug. And one thing you can do with this foam tape, which is really cool, is I cut a thin little strip of it. And then if you remove the backing paper, so it's just the foam, it is quite flexible. So remove the backing paper, and then I'm able to just curve it right along the handle here perfectly. This also works really, really well if you want to do shaker cards and you're using a circular like die cut or whatever to create a shaker card. Rather than cutting like 20 little tiny pieces of foam tape and adhering it, you can do this and curve it around, and it makes it so much easier. So got the foam tape adhered, and then I adhered this over that stamped and colored image. So I've got this fun dimensional coffee mug here. And then I trimmed down some brown cardstock to frame that piece. And then I die cut some coordinating slate gray cardstock from Simon Says. I just showed these in my just recent haul video. So I'm getting a lot better about using the new stuff I get. Anyway, die cut that with the largest die from the Blueprints 2 Dynamics, which frames that pattern paper I cut earlier. And since I only have like 3 sheets of this gray cardstock, this is something I've shown before. You can do this if you don't have as much cardstock or you just want to save cardstock. This totally works. I cut the center out of it so I can use that centerpiece for something else. Because all you're going to see is just the very edge of that cardstock. So why waste all that excess cardstock? So I use my ATG adhesive to adhere that Hello paper. You can see it frames nicely inside of the gray cardstock. And then I adhered the pattern paper to the brown cardstock and then decided to pop that piece up with some foam tape. Because once it's out, I want to foam tape all the things and make things as dimensional as possible because it's just fun. And yeah, so pop that up on some foam tape as well. So I like to use my grid mat, or on here I'm just using like scratch paper with the grid lines. This is from Simon Says as well. And I use that to kind of eyeball everything to get it lined up straight. And then I showed these sequins as well in my last little haul video. So they are, of course, I purposely got them for this series and for using on coffee cards because they're the perfect color for it. So these little craft medley sequins. So I just pulled out 6 of the sequins from the set, laid them out on my card where I wanted them first, and then I just use my multimedia matte adhesive to adhere these. And once the adhesive dries, which doesn't take very long, these are stuck on really well. Like I have sent some cards through the mail with sequins on them without extra padding or anything, and they've shown up like with the sequins still attached. So that adhesive, if you don't own it, you should. It is wonderful. I wish I had caved and got it years ago. Anyway, my card base is heavyweight white cardstock. I cut 4 1/4 by 11, and I scored it at 5 1/2 with my Teflon bone folder. And once I did that, I decided I wanted to emboss the sentiment on the inside, so I coated it again with my anti-static powder tool. And then I inked up the You're the Best stamp from the same set with the Versamark ink, and then I coated it with the same detail gold embossing powder, and then hit that with my heat tool until it was melted. And I did that part first, and then I stamped the mug because I didn't want the embossing powder to stick to the mug, because I decided to stamp it in the same Distress ink that I used to sponge the mug on the outside, just to kind of tie the color in together. And Distress ink does take some time to dry, and it just would have been more difficult, in my opinion. Really, you could do whatever floats your boat. Stamp it, make sure it's dry, then use the anti-static powder, then stamp the sentiment. Whatever works, but that's how I was thinking when I made this. And then I inked up the little steam stamp with that same slate gray ink, and I just stamped it off once before stamping it on the inside of the card. And then I grabbed the same brown marker just to finish it off and color in that, so it looks like there's, coffee, even though really, if this was mine, there'd be no coffee left. So filled that in with the marker, and then I'm just going to use my ATG adhesive again to adhere this to the card, and that will finish it off. So thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping my videos. I'm really loving all the interaction lately. And if you are interested in any of the supplies used or my blog post, anything like that, I will have that linked in the description box directly below the video. So just click on the show more to see all that info. There'll be links to the supplies used, links to my blog post, all of the pictures in my blog post, all that stuff. And when I do more cards in this series, my blog post will also have links to all of the other cards. So you can always find that info in the description box below the video. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you hopefully very soon in the next video. Bye.